Hello everyone, it is I, Amigo Aaron, back for another Sketchy Tech. This time out, we're going to be looking at a product for the color computer crowd. That's a TRS-80 Color Computer 2 and 3 for those that are uninformed in that area. And this will be looking at the CoCo Keys2USB kit. A kit that's available right now, $18 unassembled. For 10 bucks more, you can get one fully assembled and tested. And if you want something to mount it to, you can get that for only $5 more. So what is the CoCo Keys2USB? As I lay the parts out here in front of you, these are all the parts that come with the kit. They're all you need. What you've got here is something, if you're familiar with the key raw on the Commodore 64, this is the exact same thing for the CoCo. This allows you to take a color computer through the use of this, an Arduino small PCB, and lets you hook your CoCo keyboard up to a USB compatible PC device. And not just PCs, but Raspberry Pis or anything that can use a USB keyboard, you should be good to go. So what I've done here, I'm going to solder this sucker together myself. I use this as a sort of a solder project. I'm doing a video for work, and so we've soldered this thing in, and we're gonna do it right here on the Sketchy Tech in super duper times 18 speed. You'll notice that this thing has only a few parts. You've got the PCB itself. You've got a edge connector there. It's not an edge. It's a cable connector for the CoCo 2. And then you've also got another connector there for the CoCo 3. And you've got a couple little headers to slip you on your Arduino board, and that's all there is to it. It's a pretty simple, I would say, as far as rating soldering projects, this is a great soldering project for a beginner. It's quite simple. I didn't have any trouble putting it in. And this entire process took me about, I'd say, 20 minutes to a half hour. And now I'll admit I'm a pretty good hand at this sort of thing. But if you're a beginner, this would be a great project you could do over an afternoon. And if you're someone that needs this to actually use it specifically to have your CoCo 2 or 3 usable as a USB device, and you're a little worried about your soldering skills not being up to snuff, I would not worry. I think anyone can do this if they have enough gumption. Now, that said, if you want one that's fully tested and sold to you in glorious tested and assembled version, that's available, like I said, from the same website. So they're just pull-down menus. The fellow behind this is a guy named Paul Fitzgerald. He's a pretty well-known fellow in the CoCo community. So you're not just ordering for some mystery provider. You'll also notice that there's a jumper that you also install in this thing. The jumper really, Paul told me, was just for sort of a third-party bit of hardware. So if you're not doing anything particularly spectacular, you won't need to worry about the jumper. But it's there in case you have that particular item. And you can see me going through and soldering this thing in. I've got a Color Computer 2 that I bought at the old hillbilly flea market and used it for quite a while, but the motherboard in it's gotten jacked up, and so I am going to reuse the case and the keyboard. Really, I've built the Commodore 64 with a key raw and a Raspberry Pi, but it's funny, when this came along, I had this CoCo setting here, and I was like, what can I do with this thing? Well, I also had my Atomic Pi setting here, and so I thought to myself, everyone's using the Raspberry Pi to build their own CoCo Pi. I'm going to use the Atomic Pi for mine. That way I can use Windows items in it. So I'm gonna do that, and that's what I'm going to do. So this was the first step of my plan to go down that road. Now, you can see here I've completed the assembly, and we're ready to fire this thing up, and we're going to learn a lesson here. This also has a little bit of like a mylar or a plastic wedge that goes in behind. You'll see where I'm pointing at it here. goes in behind the cable, and what that does is secure the cable in to make it nice and tight in that connector. Again, this is the CoCo 2 model. The CoCo 3 would fit into the other header that you've got there. And then you've got the Arduino hooked to a USB and running into my laptop there. So, and this is where we come to an interesting conundrum, which we'll see in a minute. So, right here, you've got to be careful with these CoCo keyboard cables. Any of those old cables are real flimsy. So, what I've got here is I'm going to run VCC, the Windows CoCo emulator. This actually provides shortcuts for 3 different sets of shortcut keys that will let you change sort of the functionality of the keyboard. And so there's my ancient laptop. But by God, IBM made them to last, and these things, they just won't die. Now, as I start to type here, and I'll zoom out, you're going to see that whatever I type on the screen is incorrect. We're getting the wrong letters when we type. Everything seems to be functioning properly, but for whatever reason, we're getting the wrong letters on this thing. And Paul got with me to try to figure out what happened and what was going on here, and it was quite an interesting development that I will go into in graphic detail. Let's have a look at what we decided to try as a workaround here. I've been in touch with Paul, the developer of this board. He's given me a ton of his time and effort, and we've decided that what we're going to do is the keyboard that I have is made with the metal leads that come out of the keyboard on the wrong side for this connector. Very strange. He says he's never seen one like it. So lucky me. So what we did was I pulled this connector out of the CoCo Keys2USB, just pulled it completely back out. And what I did was I took the connector off my original CoCo 2 board, the defunct non-working board. And by the way, I took that out with no pulled barrel. Everything is copacetic. So if someone wanted to work on this, the board is good to go. I just pulled out the connector, and we have literally soldered it in the board, just directly into these holes. You can see I just soldered it right in there. And what we think is going to happen is, since it's going to plug in this connector, and this connector can read the keyboard on either side, we think this will solve the problem. And I gotta give Paul credit for coming up with this one. A wise man. So I've soldered it in. I didn't bother soldering I didn't fill in those holes there. I just left them open, so it shouldn't matter. And we'll go over and test this out, and we'll see if we get any action. Fingers crossed, everybody. Okay, so here we are once again. This time with a different rig. We've got our old salvaged connector hooked in to this new board that Paul has built. A brilliant, simple board, the Eduardo. And then we've got our melted keyboard, the classic, the vintage melted keyboard. Here's the USB cable you can see running all the way to here. And we're going to plug her in and see if we get any action. Let's plug her in the right way. Alright, we got lights. That's why we had all this before. Now I'm just going to go through and type, and we're going to see what comes up on the screen. So I'm going to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll see how that goes. Here we go. Oh, I think we've got it. I think that did the trick. 8, 9. Look, you can see the lights flickering. And look at that, folks. Sweet keyboard action. Look at that. So, I think we have done the deal. So happy that that worked out. And of course, leave it to me to get the quirkiest of quirky keyboards. Let's see if the shift's working. Yes, outstanding. I know this is riveting to watch a man tight, but this is very satisfying after going through a bunch of rigmarole and a lot of soldering. You can see right there, spacebar. It's a go, ladies and gentlemen. It's a go, and there you can see it in all of its glory. The CoCo Keys2USB 1.2. I recommend it. Normally, you would not have these problems, but I had to have the off-brand wacky keyboard. Now, I've been in touch with Paul through this entire ordeal. He's a heck of a guy. Has literally spent hours with me trying to rectify the situation. I want to give this guy big props. This is a man that stands behind his products, and they're quality products. So do not hesitate. If you have a need to interface your CoCo 2 or 3 keyboard via USB, this is the option you need to go for. Thanks again, everybody. This is the Quirky Tech, signing off. Adios.